Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a pair of very worn Roman sandals and taking a long, dusty walk across the empire. Picture this, you're trudging along the famed Roman road, maybe the Via Appia, maybe some lesser-known goat trail rebranded as a highway. Your feet ache, your scroll satchel is cutting into your shoulder, and the sun is doing its best to roast you like a festival boar. You're the tabularius, the Roman mail courier, and you've got official business, a bad back, and zero respect from the citizens you serve. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're listening from, and what time it is in your part of the world. Always fun seeing how far this sleepy legion stretches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start the day before dawn. Roman couriers don't get to enjoy leisurely mornings. The post waits for no man, especially not one with blisters. You strap on your caligy, the standard-issue Roman marching sandals, and immediately remember why you hate them. They look great, leather laces all the way up your calves, metal hobnails on the soles, but after 5 miles, the glamour wears off, and the chafing kicks in. You're not alone in your suffering. Soldiers wore these too, but at least they got breaks and battlefield glory. You're just the guy who hands scrolls from one sweaty man to another. And still, these sandals are practically sacred. Lose them, and you might as well walk barefoot over volcanic gravel. You try stuffing some linen under your heel today, but it bunches up awkwardly, creating new blisters in exciting locations. Historians still argue whether mail couriers had access to custom footwear, or just reused worn-out gear from retiring soldiers. Either way, your feet are paying for someone else's budget cuts. By mile 4, you're already eyeing the ditches longingly, not to lie down, but to soak your toes. The roads, famously engineered and immortalized in every textbook, are impressive from an aerial view. But down here, at shin level, there's stone and dust and the occasional suspicious puddle. You swear that last stone was deliberately sharpened. Every so often, a passing ox cart rattles by, stirring up clouds of choking dust. You wave. They don't wave back. Everyone assumes you're some kind of wandering scribe or a poor man who talks to scrolls. You are both, in a way. Halfway to the next relay station, a creaky milestone tells you that you've only walked 6 miles. It's shaped like a mini obelisk, carved with distances to Rome in Latin numerals, but you're pretty sure someone carved a few of them while drunk. You could have sworn the last one said you were closer to Rome. You mutter under your breath, mostly unrepeatable things about the Senate's postal priorities, and shift your satchel. Inside are official documents, military orders, tax reports, gossip in the form of coded letters. None of it is your business, of course, but one can't help but notice when a scroll smells like perfume and is sealed with a suspiciously flowery insignia. And then there's the weather. Not quite hot enough to call it summer, but your tunic is already soaked with sweat. Roman tunics, by the way, are not moisture-wicking. They're more like itchy togas with poor ventilation. You'd kill for a linen undershirt, or, shoes that didn't stab you with every step. Some couriers wrap cloth around their feet to soften the impact. Others use crushed fig leaves under the sole, which doesn't help much unless you're also craving a snack. There's even a rumor, probably started by that one guy in Cappadocia, that urine works as a numbing agent if applied directly to the heel. You're not that desperate. As you hobble toward the horizon, you fantasize about stopping in the next Mancio, an official roadside inn built for couriers like you. Maybe they'll have hot lentils, some olive paste, a friendly mule to pat, or maybe just a wooden bench you can cry on. You never know. The truth is, mailmen in Rome had it rough. Sure, there was a formal system, the cursus publicus, and roads that connected the empire like veins. But the job? It was sweat, loneliness, and a slow descent into orthopedic misery. There's no statue to the anonymous courier who limped across the Alps to deliver an invitation to a senator's cousin's wedding. But there should be. You pause to drink from your canteen. It's warm, obviously. The nearest spring was 3 miles ago, and you didn't trust it because there was a frog in it. You didn't know frogs could glare until today. Back to walking. Your steps crunch, shuffle, drag. Somewhere in the distance, a crow caws ominously. You pretend it's encouraging you. It isn't. But hey, only 30 more miles until Rome. Or until the next milestone proves you wrong again. You trudge on, a reluctant gladiator in the grand arena of badly labeled Roman infrastructure. The sun climbs a little higher, and the road, somehow, becomes less informative. You've got a rough idea of the route, Rome this way more or less, but the markers are confusing. The Roman road network is one of history's greatest achievements, sure. Over 250,000 miles of thoroughfares crisscrossing the empire like veins on an overworked courier's leg. But no one ever said those roads were easy to navigate without divine intervention or a very talkative local goat. You pass a milestone that seems to list a city name you've never heard of. Vindobona? Isn't that somewhere near the Danube? But you're headed west. Or at least you thought you were. The sun's position, the slope of the road, and your gut are all saying different things. You spin slowly like a confused sundial, then pick a direction based on which way the mule droppings seem fresher. Roman couriers didn't get maps. They got itineraria, lists of destinations with distances between them. Helpful, sometimes. But often, the terrain changed, rivers flooded, or entire villages simply ceased to exist. Historians still argue whether certain courier routes were formalized or mostly left to the instincts of tired men and borrowed donkeys. And the locals? They don't always help. You stop a farmer hoeing what might be beets or might be angry dirt and ask him, in polite Latin, where the next mancio is. He blinks. Says something in a thick dialect that sounds like a goose sneezing. Then he gestures vaguely in a direction that includes 3 hills, a stream, and what you're fairly certain is a haunted forest. Still, you nod, thank him, and march on. It's either that or turn around, and your pride is barely holding your sandals on as it is. Your route takes you off the stone-paved road for a short time, following what should be a shortcut, a decision you regret almost immediately. The earth path dips, then rises into a hill so steep it should have a warning sign, mild uphill stroll for mountain goats only. You ease your way to the top, only to discover that someone has lovingly carved another confusing milestone at the summit. This one's chipped and barely legible, possibly cursed. You squint and read what might be Roma XXII. Or maybe Roma LXXXII. Hard to say when your sweat is dripping into your eyes. To make matters worse, you keep hearing contradictory rumors from other travelers. One man insists the main road was rerouted due to a noble's vineyard expansion. Another says there's a new shortcut, but it involves crossing a marsh that swallows carts whole. A woman tells you the next town over is hosting a festival and all roads are blocked off with garlands and sarcasm. Honestly, it's a miracle anything gets delivered in this empire. Still, you have a secret weapon, an almost supernatural internal compass developed from years of trial, error, and blaming every mistake on Mercury. He's the god of messengers, after all. When in doubt, you mutter a few words in his honor, roll your shoulders, and press on, hoping he's too busy to notice you're actually cursing him. The physical signs may be confusing, but you begin to trust your senses. The way dust clings differently to roads near towns, how the smell of olives means a press is nearby, or how the quality of roadside graffiti improves the closer you get to civilization. Some of those scribbles are pure poetry. Others are just anatomical guesses. You finally hit a fork in the road. One way leads up toward a ridge dotted with cypress trees. The other dips into a valley where smoke from hearths curls lazily above distant rooftops. No signs. No locals. Just instinct. You go left. Why? Because the sun's heat feels marginally less offensive that way. That's the level of decision-making we're working with today. And sure enough, within an hour you spot a familiar Roman aqueduct in the distance. A curved spine of stone slicing the sky in graceful arches. Civilization, or at least plumbing, can't be far now. You pick up the pace, despite the fact that your heel has started making a squelching noise suspiciously reminiscent of that frog spring earlier. Some say the cursus publicus, the imperial mail system, was the envy of the world. And maybe it was, from a bureaucrat's desk in Rome. But for you, walking these miles, hunched under the weight of official business and unofficial complaints, it feels like a game of where in Jupiter's name am I? With no prizes and very poor snacks. You spot another milestone. This one is mercifully intact, and it reads, Roma 18. You're finally heading the right direction. You try to smile, but your face is too tired for such extravagance. You spot the Mancio in the distance, a squat stone building with a roof that has definitely seen better days. You can practically taste the barley soup. Maybe they'll even have bread this time, the kind that hasn't doubled as a doorstop first. The moment you reach the outer yard, you're greeted with a chorus of squawks and snorts. Not from people, oh no, from animals. An ox tied to a fig tree stares at you like you've just insulted his lineage. A pair of mangy chickens peck at something that may or may not be edible. You don't ask. You make your way inside. The host, an older man with approximately 4 remaining teeth, nods without enthusiasm and gestures toward a communal table. You drop your satchel beside you and take a seat, trying not to groan like a broken amphora. A bowl of soup sloshes in front of you. It smells brown. That's the only word you can find. The consistency is questionable, somewhere between broth and mudslide. Still, you're starving. You dunk your spoon, take a sip, and immediately regret it. It's lentils, yes, but lentils from last season, boiled in the memory of flavor. There's a faint metallic tang you choose to interpret as iron-rich water and not something worse. To drink, the host provides a clay jug filled with what he calls wine. You take a cautious sip. It's vinegar with ambitions. Roman wine at roadside stations is notoriously variable. Some innkeepers water it down. Others steep it with herbs that should never meet a grape. You once drank a batch so astringent it felt like your tongue had signed up for military service. And this is where the mailman complaints really begin. Because you're not just walking from town to town. You're doing it on bad food, worse drinks, and the same 3 tunics you've had since Caligula was in short pants. Historians still debate whether couriers had designated uniforms or just wore whatever they could scrub the road out of. You take another bite of soup and try not to crunch something that was probably once alive. There's no bathhouse here, just a barrel out back filled with water that looks like it's been petitioning the gods for release. You splash your face anyway. The coolness is a small mercy. You stare up at the sky, which is beginning to fade into dusky blue, and consider whether you could just sleep under the stars tonight. But then you remember the mosquitoes, and the frogs, and that one traveling bard who told you about a weasel that stole his boots in the night. Instead, you opt for the room. It's not really a room. more like a corner of the inn cordoned off by a threadbare curtain and the promise of privacy. The cot creaks when you sit down. The pillow smells like old cheese and disappointment. You try to sleep, but the snoring begins early. A trader from Narbo, who apparently inhaled his weight in garlic before bed, is doing his best impression of a malfunctioning bellows. Someone in the next cot over is mumbling in their sleep, something about overdue taxes and runaway goats. You try to tune them out by focusing on the rhythmic drip of water from a loose roof tile. It helps. A little. Your satchel is clutched under one arm. That bag is your life. Not because the scrolls inside are valuable to you, but because losing them means facing the wrath of the bureaucracy. And Roman bureaucracy is not a gentle beast. If you lose a scroll, you're not only fired, you're probably fined, and possibly publicly shamed with a plaque describing your ineptitude in unflattering Latin. Before dawn, you're up again. Your joints crack like dry papyrus. The innkeeper hands you a fresh wax tablet with your next assignment scribbled in shorthand. You squint. It's another 15-mile walk. Uphill. Possibly through a flooded ravine. Of course. No breakfast today. Just a handful of olives and half a stale flatbread you found in your pack. You whisper a quick plea to Mercury and tighten the satchel strap. Your heel still aches from yesterday, and your lower back has started a union without consulting you. Still, you walk. Because the job never waits. Rain or shine, hunger or not, the empire must communicate. Armies depend on your scrolls. Governors expect news. And someone somewhere absolutely must know what that senator's nephew named his third pet ostrich. You sigh, shoulders hunched, and rejoin the road. Somewhere out there, someone is writing a reply to the scroll you just delivered. And you'll be the one to carry it. Your feet crunch the gravel rhythmically, the early light turning the dust a soft gold as you rejoin the long, silent road. The air is cool for now, a temporary blessing, and you breathe in deeply, savoring the short window before the sun decides to start its slow, merciless roasting session. The olives from breakfast sit like pebbles in your gut. The flatbread might have been older than the aqueduct you passed 2 towns back. You adjust your satchel and start humming to yourself, something low and droning, just enough to keep time. Some couriers sing. Others recite poetry or insult passing shrubs for entertainment. You found that humming wards off the deep, creeping boredom better than conversation with yourself, which you already do far too often. Your stomach growls. You pat it like a misbehaving donkey and tell it to wait. The next mutatio, a relay station with fresh mules and possibly a wheel of cheese, is still hours away. Lunch on the road is always a gamble. You've eaten boiled cabbage that tasted like wet socks, and more than once accepted a meat pie that was more bone than substance. Historians still argue whether Roman couriers were provisioned by the state or left to forage and haggle along the way. Judging by the meager leftovers you've been offered in villages, you suspect the latter. The worst is when you arrive late to a station and the best bits have been picked over by soldiers. You once arrived to find only a single burnt onion and a jug of wine so vinegary it nearly undid your childhood memories. Today, you're hoping for something a little more civilized. Maybe a bowl of lentils, or God's willing, chickpeas. Not the mushy kind. The firm ones, like your aunt used to make before she moved to Ostia and married that insufferable baker. As the sun climbs higher, the smell of something cooking reaches you. Smoke, herbs, maybe fish? You pick up your pace. Your legs complain, your blisters protest, but the scent is too promising to ignore. You arrive at a village square where a woman is roasting fish over an open fire. The air is thick with smoke, but it smells like actual food. You eye her with the subtle desperation of a man on his fourth day of barley paste. She squints at your satchel, then your sandals. "Courier?" she asks. You nod. She nods back, a little smugly. "1 denarius. You hesitate. It's not cheap, but your stomach makes the decision for you. You hand over the coin and sit on a low stone bench, biting into the roasted fish like it's a banquet. It's shockingly good. Crispy skin, flaky inside, seasoned with something sharp and lemony. The juice runs down your chin and you don't even care. You'd let this woman adopt you and rename you Scroll Boy if she kept feeding you like this. While you eat, a small boy approaches with a jug of wine and a clay cup. He pours with the seriousness of a senator's aide. You sip. It's not bad. A little sour, but drinkable. A fringe detail, maybe, but some Roman couriers carried their own spice packets to mix with bad wine. You've yet to try it, though you do keep a pinch of cumin in your belt pouch, mostly because it smells better than your feet. After lunch, the walk resumes. Your belly is a little happier now, and you start to relax, until you hear the telltale thud-thud-thud behind you. Donkeys. You move aside just in time for a pair of loud, braying donkeys to pass, tethered to a traveling vendor who nods as if you've just done him a noble service. You nod back, resisting the urge to trip him gently. Animals are a daily part of life on the Roman roads, and not always in the ways you expect. You've been chased by geese, spat at by camels, and once stepped on what you think was a sleeping badger. There's no official rulebook for this, just instinct and prayer. And swearing, occasionally. Sometimes, you'll come across a traveling noble's caravan. Horses, wagons, silk curtains fluttering dramatically in the breeze. They won't acknowledge you. You're invisible. A dusty shadow on the road, carrying messages that might include their own secrets. It's funny how often the elite forget that couriers read. You don't, of course. Officially. But when a scroll arrives tied in silk ribbon, sealed with red wax and heavy perfume, it's hard not to notice. Especially when the seal bears a crest you just saw in that other letter, the one you dropped off 2 towns ago. You trudge on. The afternoon heat sets in like a curse. Your sandals, still damp from morning dew and general suffering, begin to rub the skin raw along your ankles. You stop to retie the straps, murmuring under your breath like a priest performing a ritual of foot preservation. You pass a wayside shrine, small, crumbling, with a faded carving of Mercury holding his winged staff. You pause, toss in a copper, and whisper a half-sarcastic prayer, "Please don't let me eat boiled cabbage tonight." You don't wait for a response. You already know the gods have a wicked sense of humor. You've barely left the shrine behind when a guttural woof rips through the still air. Your heart skips a beat. You've heard that sound before, and it never ends with a friendly belly rub. You freeze. On the edge of the road, just ahead, stands a dog. No collar, no leash, no intention of wagging. This isn't a well-trained household companion. This is a territorial, sunburnt beast with a missing ear and the expression of someone who's been cheated at dice and is looking to take it out on your ankles. You slowly reach for a crust of bread in your pouch. Offerings, after all, aren't just for the gods. You toss the crust, and the dog watches it fall with contempt. Then, with a growl, it turns its attention back to you. You mutter something unrepeatable in Latin and back away. The dog trots off eventually, but not before leaving you rattled and profoundly aware of how vulnerable mailmen are on these long, lonely stretches. Animals are just part of the daily gamble. You've dodged donkeys that kick sideways, outrun chickens possessed by Mars himself, and once had a standoff with a goose that refused to let you pass a bridge. Geese, by the way, are not funny little birds. They are feathered demons with wingspans of pure hatred. And then there are the insects. You've never seen a mosquito as large as the ones that linger around swampy roads near Capua. They hover like vultures and sting like failed love letters. There's a fringe theory among naturalists that these beasts were bred specifically to toughen soldiers before battle. If that's true, you're ready for a war. Historians still argue whether Roman postal couriers were issued any sort of self-defense tools. You've heard some were allowed short daggers. You, however, carry only a walking stick and a pouch of dried figs, neither of which is especially intimidating when wielded against, say, a bear. Yes, bears. You've heard the stories. A courier in the Alps who turned a corner and ended up in a staring contest with an enormous brown bear. The bear won. Always does. And yet, the most irritating creatures aren't always the big ones. Once, while sleeping under an olive tree near Tarraco, you woke up to find ants marching across your forehead, carrying away crumbs from your dinner and possibly parts of your dignity. By mid-afternoon, the terrain shifts. You've left the open fields and now walk through what could generously be called a forest trail and more accurately be described as a tangle of vines, thorns, and deeply suspicious rustlings. You keep your walking stick at the ready, less for attack and more for poking things you'd rather not touch. The shade is nice, but it's deceptive. Shadows move too easily here. A rustle in the bushes could be a deer, or another one of those bandit ferrets people keep warning you about. You don't even know if that's a real thing, but it sounds unpleasant. The road narrows, curving slightly uphill, and you spot tracks in the dirt. Hooves, small paws, and something else. Something clawed. You choose not to think too hard about it. To distract yourself, you whistle a little tune, one you picked up from a bard in Lugdunum. It's supposed to be about bravery, but you've rewritten most of the lyrics to reflect your current life. Brave was the postman, sore were his toes. Eventually, you come upon a fork where a small shrine to Diana stands half hidden in vines. Offerings lie scattered, a few coins, some herbs, a chunk of cheese. You add a fig from your pouch and ask quietly for safe passage. Not because you're superstitious, of course. Just thorough. Not 10 steps later, you nearly step on a snake. It slithers out from under a rock like it was waiting for you. You leap back, sandals scraping against the stone, and let out a yelp that you pray no one heard. It disappears, uninterested in your scrolls or dignity. You take a deep breath. Nature's mail interception service is alive and well today. As the trees thin out and the road widens again, you catch sight of another courier in the distance. He's heading the opposite direction, his stride fast, sandals caked with mud, face flushed from effort. You nod to each other as you pass. No words needed. Just the tired mutual understanding of two men who have both been barked at, bitten, pecked, stung, and chased by something that definitely had more legs than it should. He points vaguely behind him. Careful. There's a goat on the bridge. Doesn't like men in tunics. You thank him and continue on. Another day, another unexpected confrontation with livestock. Honestly, it's not the scrolls. It's not the roads. It's not even the wine. It's the animals that make this job feel like a never-ending mythological trial. Mercury should have warned you, or at least gifted you a backup tunic for when a chicken steals yours. Still, you carry on. Because someone has to deliver the news, and that someone just might be you, provided you survive the goat. The sun's dipping low now, stretching your shadow long across the stones. You've been walking for what feels like a lifetime. Past fields, past forests, past that one goat who, thankfully, decided to spare you after a very tense stare-down. Your legs ache in places you didn't know had muscles, and you're beginning to suspect that your spine has actually compressed from the weight of your satchel. You've just started fantasizing about an early dinner and a soft bench when you remember the scroll you're delivering today. The one sealed with crimson wax and bound with 2 ribbons. The important kind. It's heavy, not physically, but symbolically. The kind of message that makes innkeepers straighten their posture and scribes stop mid-chisel when they see it. You're not supposed to know what's inside. Technically, you're just a delivery man. But realistically, you've learned a few things on the road. Scrolls like this don't just contain wheat inventories or news of a new aqueduct. These are the messages that travel quietly between powerful men. Orders, requests, threats dressed as pleasantries. Sometimes, love letters dressed as poetry. Historians still debate whether Roman couriers were trained in discretion or simply trusted not to read what they carried. The official line is that tampering with the mail was a capital offense. But the truth? You've seen plenty, smelled more, and once tripped and watched an entire message unravel at your feet, revealing a poem so steamy it nearly set fire to your eyebrows. Today's scroll smells like frankincense, unmistakably expensive. Someone is trying very hard to impress someone else. You adjust the satchel, trying to resist the temptation to speculate further. But your imagination fills in the blanks all too eagerly. Perhaps it's a senator sending word to his mistress in Capua, or a general urging reinforcements while phrasing it like an invitation to dinner. And then there are the military ones. Heavy parchment, sealed with double cords. Those carry the weight of decisions, troop movements, promotions, supply routes. Once, you delivered a message to a fort in the north, only to pass the same unit retreating south the very next day. Whatever was in that scroll, it changed their fate before their sandals even cooled. You've also carried messages meant to disappear. Not literally vanish, of course, but delivered with a clear implication: this never happened. A well-dressed man in a village square once handed you a scroll that bore no seal, only a wax smudge and the faintest scent of almond oil. When you asked where to deliver it, he simply said, "To the woman who already knows it's coming." Cryptic, romantic, deeply unsettling. You often wonder how many secret affairs, quiet betrayals, or whispered conspiracies you've been a silent part of. The scrolls don't talk, but they linger, especially the ones where your fingers feel the faint indentation of hurried writing, as if the sender didn't so much compose the letter as unload it onto the parchment like a burden. Of course, there are the funny ones too. You once delivered a scroll that was nothing more than a recipe, a very elaborate recipe, for turnip stew. It included 7 variations, 3 drawings, and an aggressive footnote about the importance of fennel. The recipient read it, nodded solemnly, and handed you a single plum in thanks. You treasure that plum, mostly because it didn't taste like vinegar. And occasionally, you get the really personal stuff, those letters sealed with care, often poorly spelled, sometimes accompanied by small trinkets. A pressed flower, a lock of hair, a child's sketch of a horse that looks suspiciously like a loaf of bread. These are the messages you handle with the most care. Because while the empire may ride on politics, military campaigns, and tax reports, it breathes with the lives of people trying to stay connected, one inked thought at a time. You pass a milestone that reads Roma 12. You're getting close. Close enough that every letter in your bag feels heavier. Every scroll, a new branch of someone else's life, entrusted to your dust-caked hands. You're not supposed to read them, but you do carry them. Their weight. their urgency, their hope. The road rises a little as you near the outskirts of a large town, likely a final stop before Rome itself. The buildings rise from the dust like relief from a long dream. A watchtower, a granary, even a forum at the far end, echoing with evening chatter. You pause on a ridge, just for a moment. The sky behind you is smeared with lavender and soft orange. Below, people are lighting lamps, closing stalls, leading goats, always goats, back into pens. You watch them. You imagine the letters they might be waiting for. A brother's news. A merchant's contract. A lover's apology. You tug your satchel forward gently. Not just scrolls. Stories. And you're the one who carries them forward. The lamps flicker gently as you descend into the town, their glow warm and honey-colored in the thickening dusk. The first scent that hits you is bread. Actual bread, fresh, crusty, possibly edible without soaking it for 3 hours first. You inhale deeply, momentarily imagining what life would be like if you worked in a pastrina, a bakery, kneading dough instead of blisters. But you're not here for leisure. You're here to deliver. You make your way toward the tabularium, the local records office where couriers report and hand off their satchels to scribes or senior messengers. You knock, and the door creaks open to reveal a clerk who looks like he's been inhaling scroll dust since Julius Caesar was in sandals. He eyes you, then your satchel. From Narbo. You nod. He doesn't say thank you. Of course not. You hand over the scrolls, one by one. He logs them in with a wax tablet and a bone stylus, muttering names under his breath. Senators, magistrates, merchants. You suppress a smirk when you see him pause on the perfumed one. His eyebrow rises 0.5 millimeter. Then he logs it like the rest. The process takes time. You stand there awkwardly, your knees locking, shoulders sagging, as you wait for the return satchel. It arrives, heavier than the one you just emptied. Typical. You're given a quick instruction. Deliver 2 scrolls within the town, and 1 to a villa outside the walls. You want to protest. Maybe remind him you've just walked 30 miles and been harassed by everything from dogs to whether to dairy-based wine substitutes. But you don't. Because you're a courier. And the job doesn't end just because your soul wants a nap. The first delivery is easy, a townhouse not far from the central market. You're greeted by a bored servant who accepts the scroll with one hand and a date pastry in the other. You hate him just a little. The second delivery is stranger. You knock at a nondescript door, and a woman answers with sharp eyes and silver rings on every finger. She reads the seal, frowns slightly, and nods. "Tell no one you came here," she says, slipping a coin into your hand. You're not sure whether to feel honored or worried. Probably both. The third delivery is the long one. Out beyond the town gates, across a small stone bridge, and into the foothills where the villas sprawl like lazy cats. The road narrows again, the buildings falling away into fields of wheat and the occasional olive grove. Cicadas buzz lazily in the gathering dusk. You pass a shepherd who's playing a reed flute to a very disinterested group of sheep. You wonder what it's like to live here, to stay in one place, to have a view of the same horizon every day, instead of wondering if you'll reach the next milestone before nightfall or wolves. The villa rises at the top of a hill, simple but proud. A small courtyard, ivy creeping along the walls, and a clay amphora of what you hope is wine cooling by the door. You knock. A servant answers, squinting at you suspiciously before accepting the scroll. You wait. There's always a possibility someone wants to respond immediately. But today, you're dismissed with a nod. As you turn to leave, you realize just how sore your legs are. Every step downhill is a protest from your calves, your shins, your knees. Your sandals, those terrible, faithful traitors, have started rubbing raw along your toes again. It's like walking on angry rope. You make your way back toward the town, hoping you'll arrive before the gates close for the night. Roman towns don't like latecomers, especially ones covered in dust and muttering about goats. Fortunately, you reach the gate in time. The guard grunts something close to a greeting as he lets you through. You ask if there's a free room at the Mancio. He shrugs. If the traders haven't filled it. Ah, traders. Always getting the best rooms because they come with shiny coins and no road dust under their fingernails. You head there anyway, because what's the alternative? Sleeping in a ditch with beetles for neighbors? The Mancio is half full. You luck out. A narrow cot, a table, and even a cracked pitcher of water. It's luxury by your standards. You clean your face, your hands, and your feet, which takes longer than you'd like. Then, you finally collapse on the cot. It groans under your weight, but doesn't break. A win. Outside, laughter echoes through the street. Someone is playing a lyre. Somewhere, bread is still baking. For a moment, you imagine getting up, joining the others, pretending you belong here. But no, you're the courier. You don't stay. You pass through. You drift off to sleep still wearing one sandal. The other fell off sometime during the second delivery, and you only just now noticed. You decide to find it in the morning. Or not. Morning arrives not with the gentle light of dawn, but with a violent clang just outside your window. Someone's dropped a cart axle, or a goat's finally succeeded in kicking over a stall. Either way, you're awake. You sit up slowly, every joint protesting. The cot has not improved overnight. In fact, it appears to have restructured your spine into a mosaic of discomfort. You rotate your neck, wince, and begin the ritual. Strap on your sandals. Yes, you found the missing one beneath the cot, covered in something that might be bread, and retighten your satchel. Today's route stretches along the coast, hugging the edge of the Tyrrhenian Sea. It sounds romantic. It is not. You start out early, weaving through the town's already busy market streets. Bakers shout. Fishmongers argue. A child nearly collides with you, carrying what appears to be a live chicken under one arm. You dodge, barely, and keep walking. Once outside the gates, the breeze carries the scent of brine and pine sap. The sea glitters to your left, tantalizing and useless. You won't be swimming today. You will, however, be walking directly next to it for miles, wishing someone had invented sandals with arch support. The coastal route is notorious for its peculiar challenges. Sure, the views are lovely. Rolling hills to the right, the sea to the left, occasional birds overhead that look far too smug. But the road? It's a crumbling, winding ribbon of frustration. Loose stones, overgrown brush, and sections where it simply disappears into cliffside and you're left guessing whether to climb or pray. About 3 miles in, you encounter your first obstacle, a group of workers blocking the road to repair a collapsed drainage culvert. One of them, sweaty and shirtless, waves you down. "Courier?" he asks, wiping his brow with a cloth that may once have been white. You nod. He grins, revealing 2 teeth and a piece of figure. You'll need to detour through the olive grove. But watch out, dogs don't like strangers. You thank him and sigh. The olive grove is beautiful, if you're here to paint, which you're not. It's a maze of low, gnarled trees and hidden holes that do their best to snap your ankles. The dogs bark the entire time, unseen but definitely present. You toss a leftover crust in the general direction of the noise and hope for the best. Eventually, the grove spits you back out onto the road, where you promptly trip over a sun-baked cart track and nearly lose your scroll bag to gravity. You mutter something unholy under your breath and press on. One of today's deliveries is urgent. The scroll is marked with a purple wax seal, Imperial Business. That means no dawdling, no detours, too late, and no excuses. You're to reach the port town of Circei before sunset. This is the part where most people imagine Roman couriers running with determination through marble arches and cheers. Reality is sweat, lots of sweat, and a slow, methodical shuffle that does not inspire statues. You pass an old woman selling fish from a basket. She looks at you, then at your feet, and clicks her tongue. "Those sandals won't make it," she mutters. You agree, but keep walking. An hour later, you stop by a roadside fountain carved in the shape of a lion's head. The water trickles weakly but clearly. You refill your skin and splash your face, catching your reflection in the ripple. Dusty, sunburnt, eyes just a little too wild. You've started talking to your bag again, not because it answers, but because it might one day. You climb a low rise and stop to admire the sea. There's a ship in the distance, a single-sail merchant vessel gliding toward port. You imagine what it's like to travel by boat. Sitting, shading, possibly being served olives instead of carrying them in a crushed pouch. But no, you're on land, and your road leads inland now, up into low hills and then down toward Circei, where the governor's assistant is no doubt impatiently pacing and wondering where his midday message is. You make it to the town gate just as the sky begins to blush with evening light. The guard squints at your dusty form, takes one look at your scroll satchel, and waves you through without a word. The governor's villa sits at the edge of the town. Not grand, but well tended. Grapevines curl along the stone walls. A servant answers, narrow-eyed and overworked. You hand over the scroll. He sighs, breaks the seal, schemes it, and says, "You're to wait for a reply." Of course you are. You sit on a bench in the villa courtyard, where a fountain gurgles and an orange cat judges you silently from a ledge. You fish a crushed fig from your pouch and chew slowly, trying not to take offense at the feline's superior posture. The servant returns 20 minutes later with a sealed scroll and a nod. "That's for me," he says. "For me." Another coastal town. Not terribly far, but not close either. You nod, stand, and leave the villa without a word. Another town, another road, another scroll. You'll sleep when you're dead, or when you finally reach a mancio with functioning doors and bread that doesn't chip your teeth. You leave Circei behind as the sky deepens to a dark lavender, the last rays of sunlight playing across the sea like molten bronze. The road east of Formii is narrower and less traveled, but it follows the coastline closely, which means two things: salty wind in your hair and absolutely no shade. You shift your satchel to the other shoulder. The fresh scroll inside is still warm from the villa's brazier, sealed again in purple wax, stamped with the same crest as before. Whatever's happening between these towns isn't your business. Officially, but unofficially, your curiosity is doing gymnastics. The road winds up a low cliff. The incline isn't steep, but your legs aren't exactly thrilled. The soles of your sandals slap against the stone with weary rhythm, and your calf muscles twitch like angry senators. You stop for a moment at a viewpoint, leaning on a mossy milestone carved centuries ago. Someone scratched graffiti into it, a stick figure next to a fish. You appreciate the artistry. Below, waves crash gently against rocks. You imagine hurling your sandals into the sea, watching them drift away like cursed relics. Then you remember you'd still have to walk barefoot, and the fantasy loses its appeal. You continue walking as twilight falls fully into night. The road ahead is marked only by the pale glint of moonlight and your own memory. You've done this route before, months ago, in the opposite direction, when it rained so hard your scrolls got soggy and you had to explain to a magistrate why his tax report smelled like mildew and shame. The wind picks up, tugging at your tunic and bringing with it the scent of pine and seaweed. You pass a cluster of cypress trees where owls hoot mournfully. One flaps out of the branches above you with a silent whoosh, nearly causing you to trip over your own sandal ties. You mutter, "Not today, feathered ghost." There's a small, half-forgotten mutatio on this stretch of road, one of the minor relay stations not always staffed. You reach it just past midnight, a squat stone building with a roof that might still be intact. Smoke curls from a narrow chimney. Inside, you find an elderly man half asleep by the hearth, tending a pot of something that smells suspiciously like barley and sadness. He squints as you enter, eyes catching the official satchel slung over your shoulder. "Courier." You nod. That's all it takes. He gestures toward a low bench, then wordlessly ladles a portion of stew into a chipped clay bowl. You thank him with the reverence of someone who hasn't had warm food since breakfast. You eat slowly, even though the stew tastes like boiled twine. It's filling, at least. The man doesn't speak much. You don't either. But there's a comfort in the silence. The kind of silence that only exists between two people who've been around too many roads, too many letters, and too many kinds of trouble. After eating, you stretch out on the bench. There's no blanket, but the heat from the fire is enough. As your eyes drift shut, the only sounds are the wind brushing against the shutters and the gentle crackle of burning olive wood. You dream lightly, of cats with scrolls for tails, of walking endlessly across a mosaic floor that rearranges behind you. You wake at dawn with a scroll imprint on your cheek and barley stuck in your beard. The old man's already outside, feeding a mule. He nods toward the water barrel near the door. You rinse your face and refill your water skin. Then, you strap on your sandals again. Left one, right one. A ritual. A curse. "Good luck," the man says, his voice as rough as the coastal path. You nod. No luck needed. Just a stretch of road, a satchel of secrets, and a body that refuses to quit, mostly out of spite. The final miles to Formie are quieter. The sea grows calmer. The road widens. You pass fishermen preparing nets, their boats creaking gently in the early morning breeze. One offers you a figure. You accept. It's sweet, soft, and perfect. You almost cry. By mid-morning, Formie rises before you, a crescent-shaped town cupped by hills and kissed by sunlight. It's a lovely place, if you're not too tired to care. You find the governor's office quickly. A pale marble building with columns that do absolutely nothing for the humidity. The assistant who greets you is well-dressed, overly perfumed, and visibly annoyed that your tunic has dust on it. He accepts the scroll with a sniff. You're late. You smile blandly. The goat says hello. He doesn't ask for clarification. He just waves you off. No tip. No praise. Just the empty, echoing silence of bureaucracy. You step back into the street, adjust your satchel, now lighter, and look east. Another scroll. Another town. Another set of ankles to destroy. But first, maybe breakfast. If you're lucky, someone in Formie is baking bread that doesn't require a chisel to eat. You leave for me with a belly full of honeyed bread and just enough wine in your system to feel something vaguely resembling optimism. Not too much, because you've learned the hard way that walking tipsy leads to falling into ditches, which leads to being bitten by creatures with too many legs and not enough manners. Today's stretch of the road cuts inland for a while, away from the glittering coastline, curling gently through farmland and wooded valleys. It's the kind of terrain that seems pleasant from a distance, but turns into an obstacle course of mud, mule tracks, and overly curious chickens once your sandals hit it. You glance at your satchel. 2 scrolls. One destined for a rural official in a hilltop village whose name you can never quite remember. Starts with a V, ends with a lot of syllables, and another marked simply P. No further address, no wax seal. Just a bit of ribbon tied tightly around the parchment like it's hiding a secret. Historians still debate whether unnamed scrolls were coded messages, personal correspondences, or just bureaucratic laziness. You've carried enough of them to suspect the answer is yes, to all 3. The morning mist still clings to the hedgerows, and the smell of damp earth and livestock hangs thick in the air. You pass a farmer guiding a pair of oxen, his tunic splattered with mud, his expression somewhere between "good morning" and "I hope your scroll explodes." "Courier," he grunts. You nod. He squints at your feet. Still wearing those? You glance down at your sandals. The straps are fraying, the leather cracked, and one sole is now thinner than a senator's loyalty. You nod again. He shakes his head. Gods be with you. They'd better be, because this road has no mercy. Mid-morning brings the first hill. Steep, sun-warmed, and suspiciously quiet. No bird song. No rustling. Just the slap of your own footsteps and the occasional pop from your knees. You mutter encouragement to your legs, which respond with silent contempt. At the summit, you're rewarded with a view of the valley below. Olive groves, vineyards, terracotta rooftops, and a single winding path cutting through it all like a ribbon. You pull a dried fig from your pouch and chew slowly, trying to ignore the fact that it tastes like sweetened shoe. You begin the descent, which is somehow worse than the climb. The gravel shifts treacherously beneath your sandals, and twice you catch yourself with a flailing windmill motion that you're pretty sure looked very heroic. Halfway down, you hear it. A creaking wheel. A snort. The unmistakable sound of a cart. You turn the bend and find yourself face to face with a merchant's wagon, its driver dozing, reins loose in his hands. The mule, sensing freedom, has drifted diagonally across the road, blocking your path entirely. You clear your throat. Nothing. You tap your walking stick against the cart's frame. The driver startles awake, blinking. Who? Courier. He peers at you. You again. You don't recognize him, but you've learned not to argue. You nod. He tugs the reins lazily. The mule glares at you, offended, but inches to the side just enough to let you squeeze past. You do so with exaggerated caution, careful not to catch your scroll satchel on the cartwheel or, worse, step in whatever the mule has left behind. An hour later, you arrive in the hilltop village whose name still refuses to stick in your memory. It smells of wood smoke and goat. A boy runs up, sees the satchel, and sprints off shouting, "The letters are here!" You're directed to a modest stone building with a red-tiled roof. Inside, a plump official in a green toga accepts the scroll, breaks the seal, reads the contents aloud to himself in a mumble, and then hands you a tiny wedge of cheese as a thank you. You nod solemnly. It's actually quite good. The second scroll, the unnamed one, you're instructed to deliver outside the village, to a house near the river. You'll know it when you see it, the official says cryptically. Of course you will. You set off down a narrow path, overgrown and buzzing with insects. The sun is high now, and sweat begins to trickle down your back. You hum softly to yourself, one of those courier marching songs that sounds noble until you remember the lyrics are mostly about socks. The house by the river appears at a bend in the path. Small, shaded by cypress trees, with faded murals on the walls and a well-tended garden out front. You knock. A woman answers. Older, sharp-eyed, with ink stains on her fingers and a dagger strapped to her hip. She says nothing, just looks at the scroll, takes it, and nods once. You don't ask questions. You don't get answers. She vanishes inside, and you turn back to the path. As you walk away, you hear her voice from within. He finally replied. You don't stop. You don't smile. But you note the words and carry them with you. Another invisible scroll tucked into your own story. The path leads back toward the main road, and for the first time today, your steps feel lighter. The satchel is empty. The breeze is soft. Even the chickens you pass on the way back to the village seem less menacing. You'll sleep here tonight, maybe in the loft of the grain house, or, if the gods are generous, in a spare cot near the stable. Tomorrow brings another road, another satchel. But for now, you rest. You sleep in the stable loft that night, nestled among sacks of barley and the soft snorts of a sleeping donkey who smells faintly of old apples. It's not the worst bed you've had. It's dry. It doesn't creak when you move. And most importantly, nothing tries to bite you in your sleep. Dawn breaks with the quiet cooing of doves and the rhythmic thud of someone chopping wood nearby. You stretch carefully. Your spine sounds like it's shifting back into place one vertebra at a time. Outside, the village is already alive with smoke curling from chimneys, the clatter of buckets, and distant yelling about lost pigs. You chew a bit of leftover cheese from yesterday and wash it down with a sip of water that tastes faintly of stable. Then you tighten the straps of your sandals, always too tight or too loose, never just right, and step back onto the road. This day's stretch is inland again, toward a cluster of settlements scattered across a hilly region known for its grain markets and slightly suspicious festivals involving painted donkeys. The satchel over your shoulder is newly restocked. 4 scrolls today, none with imperial seals but all bearing various crests, names, and one that simply says, "To Claudia. Urgent." You hope Claudia is closer than she sounds. You follow a gently rising trail that hugs a dry riverbed for a while, the kind where frogs hide in the mud and croak like tiny philosophers. The trail's been worn into deep ruts over time, and more than once you have to sidestep the remains of a cartwheel or some long-abandoned sandal, hopefully not a former courier's. Probably just a goat herder's. Probably. The first village you reach is perched atop a low hill, surrounded by olive trees that wave their dusty green fingers at you in the breeze. A boy sits by the gate, chewing something and watching the horizon like he's expecting a comet. When he sees your satchel, he yells, too loud, and runs off, shouting, "Letters! Mama, the letters!" By the time you reach the center square, a small but determined crowd has gathered. You feel like a minor celebrity, though you're pretty sure your tunic still smells like donkey. You deliver the first 2 scrolls with quiet efficiency. One to an elderly man who holds it like it's a newborn chick. The other to a merchant's wife who doesn't even glance at you, too busy examining the seal with a mix of relief and irritation. You're handed a coin in thanks. You tuck it into your belt pouch next to a button, 2 pebbles, and what might once have been a fig. There's no rest offered, of course. Just nods and distracted mutterings about taxes, land boundaries, and whether the weather this year will be kind to the grain. You leave the village and start down the winding road toward your next stop, a large villa estate nestled among vineyards. The scroll for Claudia is marked urgent, and you've been trained to treat that as code for expect drama. It's a long walk, longer than the map implied, with unexpected detours around fallen trees and a flock of geese that simply refuse to move unless bribed with something shiny. You give up a button. They accept. The villa appears at the crest of a hill, white walls gleaming in the late morning sun. A pair of guards eye you as you approach, but one recognizes your satchel and steps aside. You're led through a courtyard filled with lemon trees to a shaded portico where a woman, presumably Claudia, sits, surrounded by scrolls, wax tablets, and a cup of what smells like very expensive wine. She's young, sharp-eyed, and clearly not expecting good news. When you hand her the scroll, she frowns at the seal, breaks it with a fingernail, and reads quickly. Her expression doesn't change until the end. "Ha," she says. Then louder, "I told him so." She glances at you. "He's going to regret that. Thank you." You're dismissed with a wave, and just before you leave the courtyard, she calls out, "Do you get many like this?" You pause. Urgent scrolls or cryptic relationships? She laughs. Both. You shrug. More than I'd like. Claudia chuckles again, and you make your exit before she ropes you into her latest intrigue. By midday, the sun is merciless. The road ahead wobbles in the heat like a mirage. You find a flat stone under a fig tree and rest a moment, sipping water and rubbing your feet. One sandal strap has nearly snapped, and you briefly consider turning it into a headband and walking barefoot like some sort of dusty philosopher. Instead, you dig into your pouch, find a piece of twine from a previous parcel, and MacGyver the sandal back into submission. You head off again, this time to a farmstead where your last scroll of the day is to be delivered. The path leads you through quiet fields buzzing with bees and dotted with poppies. It's peaceful here, unnervingly so. You half expect a boar to come crashing through the wheat. The farmhouse is simple but tidy. A man answers the door with a squint and a grunt. When you hand him the scroll, he nods, scratches his beard, and offers you a slice of bread. It's still warm. You eat it right there on the doorstep like it's the last piece of food on earth. As you turn to leave, the man claps a hand on your shoulder. Stay for supper if you've nowhere to be. You pause. You do have somewhere to be. Always. But the road will still be there in the morning. You nod. That night, you eat lentils, fresh cheese, and more bread than you've earned. You fall asleep in a hayloft, full and warm, with a roof that doesn't leak and a cat curled beside your head. Tomorrow, you'll walk again. But tonight, you rest. You wake before sunrise, lulled from sleep not by a rooster, but by the gentle shuffling of the farmer starting his day. Below the loft, you hear the scrape of a hoe, the low murmur of voices, and the soft clinking of pottery. The cat that slept by your head is now gone, likely off to bother someone less grateful. You sit up, stretch your arms until your shoulder pops, and roll your ankles experimentally. They still work. Barely. The farmer's wife hands you a small bundle of bread wrapped in cloth as you descend the ladder. "For the road," she says. You offer a tired but genuine thank you. No words are enough when someone hands you bread without demanding a scroll in return. Outside, the sky is awash in pastels, rosy pinks and gentle blues. You step back onto the dirt road, the morning dew soaking into your sandals almost immediately. Lovely. That'll be blisters by lunch. Today's route winds through a series of hilltop settlements. The distance isn't terribly far, but the roads? Narrow, twisty, and lined with more rocks than a senator's wine cellar. Your satchel, restocked again by the villa's steward before dawn, now holds 3 scrolls. 2 of them are marked with merchant crests, business communications, probably involving olive oil, taxes, or scandalous grain misreporting. The third is different. A simple piece of bark, rolled and tied with a red thread. It smells faintly of beeswax and smoke. You've seen these before. They're from the Apennine shepherd tribes, semi-nomadic folk who herd goats and sheep through mountain pastures and still send messages the old way. They say more with fewer words. Sometimes it's just a phrase, sometimes a single word. Once, you carried one that read only, "Come." The first village on your path is quiet, just beginning to stir. A group of women carry baskets of herbs into a central hut, and a boy waves at you from behind a donkey he's clearly trying to bribe with dates. You deliver the first scroll to a merchant who's far too interested in how dusty your tunic is. "You couriers never wash," he says. You point out helpfully that you walk 40 miles a day and don't own a bathtub. He makes a face. You could at least change tunics. You resist the urge to ask him how many tunics he'd carry if he were on foot. Instead, you smile and leave before he can suggest anything else impractical. By mid-morning, the road narrows into a rocky pass. A group of girls wave at you from a field where they're gathering wildflowers. One calls out, "You carry secrets?" You grin. "Only boring ones." They laugh. But it's true. Most scrolls contain trade agreements, shipping manifests, birth records, and the occasional tax complaint. But that bark message, that one has potential. You reach the next hilltop hamlet just after noon. It's not so much a village as a handful of homes clustered around a crumbling stone cistern. You find the woman you're looking for, a weaver, sitting beneath an awning, her fingers dancing across a loom. She accepts the scroll without looking at you. "I've been expecting this." You watch as she breaks the wax seal, reads it, then lets out a soft sigh. She touches the scroll to her forehead. "Good news?" you ask, unable to stop yourself. She gives you a faint smile. "Better late than never." That's courier life in a sentence. She offers you a cup of goat's milk. You accept it because saying no to kindness in these places is a sin even the gods won't forgive. You linger just long enough to catch your breath, then move on. The final delivery is the bark scroll. The recipient is a shepherd who moves between high pastures, and you've been told he camps near a spring along the ridge path this time of year. So you climb. The path narrows to a thread, then becomes a scramble. You use both hands. Your knees argue. You get a splinter from a shrub you didn't even see. At one point, a very determined beetle tries to race you uphill. But at the top, there he is. An old man with a sun-darkened face, sitting by a trickling spring with a dog at his side and a half-eaten onion in his hand. He sees you, nods once, and motions you over. You hand him the scroll. He unties the red thread and unrolls it. He reads the single word aloud, quietly. "North." That's it. He folds the bark carefully, tucks it into a leather pouch, and gives you half his onion. You eat it without complaint, tears streaming from the sharpness. He doesn't speak again. Neither do you. The silence is wide, filled with wind and mountain light. You leave him there and begin the descent. Your legs wobble, and at one point you nearly tumble, but you catch yourself on a low pine branch and swear softly into the dirt. As you reach the bottom, you feel it. That slow ache of weariness, deeper than muscles or bones. You've carried 100 messages, thousands, by now. But there's something comforting about the ones with single words. No politics, no taxes, just north. That evening, you camp under a fig tree beside the road. You eat the last of your bread and drink from your water skin, warm and metallic. The stars blink overhead, and you lie back on your satchel, staring up at the same sky everyone else reads like a scroll. Full of stories. Full of directions. You don't know where the next scroll will take you, but you'll carry it anyway. You wake stiff and slightly damp under the fig tree, one sandal missing from your foot and inexplicably placed several arm lengths away, dangling from a twig as though mocking your sleep posture. The stars are long gone. In their place, a pale, sunless gray stretches overhead, dawn's sluggish cousin, the kind of sky that looks like it might start raining purely out of boredom. You sit up, brush twigs from your hair, and chew the last of a fig you must have sleep-munched sometime in the night. Then you retrieve your sandal, retie the strap, and address it firmly. Let's not do that again. Today's route loops back toward the main highway, one of those long, relatively flat stretches known for its lack of trees, water, or anything remotely interesting. The kind of place where the only change in scenery is the angle of your shadow. But first, a stop at a nearby town for resupply. You trudge in just as shopkeepers are unlocking their doors and drowsy-eyed farmers are unloading bundles of leeks, onions, and mysterious root vegetables that look like they might punch you back. You trade the last of your small coins for a fresh water skin, a chunk of barley loaf, and, luxury of luxuries, a strip of linen to rewrap your left sandal, which has begun developing an attitude and a squeak. The vendor eyes you with a mixture of pity and mild horror. Courier. You nod. He hands you a small wedge of beeswax without being asked. For the squeak. You nod again. Silent gratitude is your default setting these days. Scroll delivery resumes at midday. Your satchel now carries only 2 items: a sealed scroll with a complex, twisting signature, probably a tax assessor's complaint, and a small clay tablet stamped with cuneiform that someone insists must go to a professor of comparative scripts in the next province. Historians still argue whether Roman couriers routinely transported such foreign artifacts, or if these jobs were simply pawned off on whoever looked too tired to say no. Either way, today it's you. The first stretch of road rolls gently through farmland. Wheat on your left, cabbages on your right, and not a single shred of shade for miles. The sun punches through the clouds like it's catching up for lost time, and within an hour, your tunic is stuck to your back and your mouth tastes like baked linen. You amuse yourself by imagining a new Roman god, Postus, patron deity of dust and sweaty knees, whose only offering is a half-eaten date and a promise never to complain again. At least not until the next hill. Eventually, the road dips toward a shallow river. A few travelers are gathered there, an old man washing a cloak, a woman herding geese across a makeshift plank, and a merchant with a donkey who looks about ready to marry it out of sheer codependence. You join them at the river's edge, scoop water over your head, and watch it steam away as fast as it lands. The merchant sees your satchel and perks up. Courier, eh? You headed toward Terracina. You nod. He grins. Swap stories on the road? It's code for, I'm bored and your misery entertains me. But it's better than silence, so you agree. As you walk, he tells you about a cargo of spiced olives he once lost to a gambling debt, a woman in Capua who tried to pay him in goats, and a time his donkey stole a scroll and wouldn't return it until bribed with a fig tart. You offer one story in return, about the time you accidentally delivered a divorce petition to the wrong husband and ended up sleeping in a stable while the townsfolk sorted out their suddenly entangled relationships. You leave out the part where the wrong husband wasn't entirely unhappy about the situation. The merchant howls with laughter, then splits a hunk of dried pear with you in solidarity. Not bad, considering it tastes like tree bark soaked in honey. Eventually, he veers off toward a side road. Safe travels, courier. You respond with your standard, may your donkey behave. He laughs again and disappears over a rise. The final leg of your day leads you to a town built along a cliffside. Narrow streets, steep stairs, homes that look like they were stacked by a child playing with bricks. Delivering the scroll here involves climbing 3 staircases, ducking under 2 laundry lines, and negotiating with a dog that guards the front gate of the building with the energy of a senatorial bodyguard. You reach the recipient, an official who seems more annoyed that you arrived at all than anything else. "I expected this yesterday," he grumbles, taking the scroll without thanks. You resist the urge to mention the detour involving the squeaky sandal, the river, and the donkey with relationship issues. Instead, you give him a practiced smile and let him close the door in your face. You turn to go, then pause. Something smells good. Bread. No, honey cakes. You follow your nose down an alley to a small window where a young girl is cooling a tray of golden pastries. She sees your satchel, grins, and wordlessly hands you one. You bite into it. Warm. Sticky. Perfect. You almost cry. You find a bench in the shade of a crumbling wall and let yourself rest. The tablet for the professor can wait until tomorrow. It's close, and you know where he is, that awful domed building with too many stairs and not enough ventilation. For now, the sun is low, the sky is soft with lavender light, and your legs have entered the numb enough not to complain phase. You lean back, close your eyes, and feel the weight of the day settle into your bones like silt into riverbeds. The road continues tomorrow. But tonight, you let yourself be still. You begin the morning staring up at the domed roof of the Scholars' Hall, clutching the clay tablet that's been riding in your satchel for what feels like a century. The building towers above you in a way that's both impressive and deeply irritating, like it knows how many stairs lie inside and is smirking about it. You sigh, shift your satchel to your other shoulder, and start the climb. The steps are steep, worn smooth by centuries of sandal soles and academic egos. By the time you reach the top, your thighs are declaring mutiny, and your sandal strap has made an ominous twang. You pause at the door, catch your breath twice, and knock. No answer. You knock again. Eventually, a thin man with wild hair and an ink-stained tunic opens the door. His eyes are red-rimmed from too many candlelit nights, and he blinks at you like you might be an unusually large footnote. "Courier," you say, holding up the tablet. He gasps like you've handed him the Ark of the Covenant. "Is that?" "Oh, good heavens. Yes. Come in, come in." You step inside, nearly tripping over a pile of wax tablets stacked like firewood. Scrolls litter every surface. A bronze bust wears a toga made of notes. It smells like papyrus and overly steeped tea. He takes the tablet reverently, sets it on a pedestal like it's a newborn, and begins muttering syllables in 3 languages. You think you catch a word that means pomegranate, but you don't ask. After a moment, he claps his hands together. "This changes everything." You doubt that, but he seems happy, and that's enough. He tries to pay you with a poem. You suggest he keep that for someone with fewer blisters. He blushes and gives you half a honey cake instead. Honestly, fair trade. You leave the hall feeling lighter, partly from the sugar, partly because your satchel is finally, gloriously empty. But only briefly. At the base of the stairs, a city clerk stops you. His robe is too clean. His smile is too practiced. And his hands are full of scrolls. "We were told a courier would be passing through," he says, like you volunteered. You look at the scrolls. 5. All sealed. All official. All destined for different corners of the surrounding region. You take them. Of course you do. because this is the job. You set off westward this time, past rows of fig trees, through a wide plain dotted with old stone walls and even older sheep. The path is well marked, and the rhythm of walking settles in quickly. Your sandals squeak less today, thanks to yesterday's beeswax gift, and your legs have forgiven you just enough to operate without protest. The first scroll is for a census official in a roadside villa. You find him napping in a hammock strung between two columns. He opens one eye as you approach and lifts a hand in slow motion. Courier. You nod. He sits up, takes the scroll, reads half of it, and mutters, "Still think they overcounted goats." You leave him still arguing with himself and carry on. By noon, the sun has returned with vengeance, so you take shelter under a tamarisk tree and share the shade with a goat that doesn't blink once during your entire break. You chew on a piece of stale barley biscuit and wonder how many couriers the goat has seen. Probably too many. Scroll 2 leads you to a riverside village with huts on stilts and sandals drying on every railing. You're greeted by a child with ink-stained hands and no concept of personal space. He leads you to his father, the local schoolmaster, who accepts the scroll and nods so deeply you think he might fold in half. "The school curriculum has finally arrived," he says with quiet reverence. You glance over his shoulder and see a stack of slates with exactly 3 letters written on them. A, B, and, oddly, R. Progress is progress. You trudge on, cutting across a grove of cork oaks, where cicadas screech like gossiping senators. Your third scroll goes to a woman in a vineyard who takes it with one hand and continues harvesting with the other. She doesn't even glance at the seal before shoving it into her tunic. "It's from my sister," she says. "If it's more complaints about the wedding, I swear by Bacchus I'll elope with the neighbor's dog." You say nothing. You've learned not to engage in sibling diplomacy. You reach a low ridge where you can see far in all directions. Green fields, dusty paths, a distant caravan, and closer by, a small cluster of houses nestled in a grove of cypress trees. Your next delivery. This one is the strangest yet. The scroll is sealed with gold wax, rare, usually reserved for the overly dramatic, and smells faintly of myrrh. You deliver it to an elderly man who looks you up and down, sighs, and says, "Tell them I'm still not dead." You blink. "Would you like me to put that in writing?" He snorts and disappears into the house, muttering something about theater people. You sit on a low stone wall and laugh softly. There's comfort in the absurdity, in the people, in the fact that every scroll has its own tiny world inside it. And somehow, you keep connecting all of them together, stitch by dusty stitch. Even if your knees would prefer to do anything else. You sleep that night in a hayloft again, welcomed by a farmer who recognizes the satchel and offers you porridge with an apologetic shrug. "It's not much," he says. You taste it. It's perfect. The wind sings softly through the cracks in the beams above, and the stars blink through slits in the roof like curious spectators. Tomorrow, you'll carry the final scroll of this new batch. But for now, you're just a person in a quiet place. And that's enough. You wake before the rooster does, slipping out from under your borrowed blanket in the hayloft while the sky is still a sleepy gray. Your back cracks like firewood when you stretch, and your legs immediately begin their familiar morning protest. Low, grumbly mutiny in the form of stiff calves and knees that creak like ship rigging. One scroll left. You pull it from your satchel, now light enough to make you feel slightly off balance. This one's destination, a coastal town several hours walk away, near the edge of the territory you've been assigned for the past 3 seasons. The scroll is sealed with green wax, stamped with the insignia of the provincial archive, not a place known for urgency, which usually means the message inside is some long-awaited update on grain quotas, boundary shifts, or someone finally being removed from a local council seat after years of politely ignoring their existence. Still, you treat it with the same quiet reverence you give every message. You thank the farmer with a nod, grab a heel of yesterday's bread, and step out into the morning mist. The road is damp underfoot, your sandals leaving pale ovals in the dust. A light breeze carries the scent of rosemary and old chimneys. As you walk, the land begins to change. Hills flatten into gently rolling fields, and then into long strips of marshy grassland crisscrossed by canals and irrigation trenches. Birds skim the water's surface. Frogs mutter to each other from the reeds like gossiping bureaucrats. The coastal town comes into view by mid-morning, a smudge of red-tiled roofs and uneven alleys leaning toward the sea. You hear it before you smell it, the distant crash of waves, steady and sure, like someone sighing repeatedly in the next room. You cross a wooden bridge, duck under a line of drying fish strung across a doorway, and find the archive office tucked between a wine shop and a building that leans so hard it looks like it's whispering secrets to the sea. Inside, the clerk is exactly what you expected, pale, bespectacled, and utterly unbothered by your dust-caked tunic. He takes the scroll, nods once, and immediately tucks it away into a shelf without breaking the seal. You wait. He looks up, startled. Was there something else? You blink. That's it. Yes. What were you expecting? A medal. You shrug. You weren't, but maybe a chair would have been nice. You step back out onto the street, scroll delivered, satchel empty. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, you don't have a next destination. No new scrolls. No urgent deliveries. No ticking timer on your shoulder in the shape of a wax seal. You lean against a post near the docks and just watch. Fishermen unloading tangled nets. A woman arguing with a goose. Children using a broken amphora as a drum. An old man napping with a cat on his lap. Life moving at its own pace. You take off your sandals and sit with your feet dangling over the water, the cool spray prickling your ankles. Your toes are a mess, dusted in sand, scuffed, and just shy of sprouting their own postal codes. You breathe. Not deeply. Not dramatically. Just a small breath, the kind you haven't had time to notice in far too long. And then, in the far corner of your eye, you see it. A boy. Holding a scroll. He's walking fast. Looking. Searching. He spots your satchel, now lying beside you, slack and tired. His face lights up with something that looks suspiciously like hope. You already know what he's going to ask before he opens his mouth. Are you the courier? You pause for a moment longer than usual. Then you nod. He holds the scroll out with both hands like it's something sacred. It's from the governor's estate. Needs to go inland. Urgent. Of course it is. You take the scroll, the wax seal still soft from recent stamping. You weigh it in your palm. Another long road. Another night in a stable. Another round of mystery mud and strange conversations and honey cakes offered by people who won't remember your name. But this is what you do. You slip the scroll into your satchel. Sand. Rewrap your sandal. And smile faintly. He blinks. Don't you get tired? You think about it for a moment. Only when I stop. The boy nods solemnly and runs off the way he came. You turn inland, toward the hills again, the sea now at your back and the sun rising higher, lighting the road in long, golden streaks. Your shadow walks ahead of you. Your sandals creak just a little. And just like that, the journey continues. Wind down. 300 words. As the footsteps fade into the soft distance, and the scent of sea air lingers like a memory. You feel the rhythm of that ancient road settle into your breath. The dust has cleared. The scrolls are delivered. And even though tomorrow may bring more wax seals and winding trails, for now, there is quiet. Imagine your shoulders free of the satchel's weight, your feet cooling in the shallows of a spring. The aches and bruises of so many long days melting away under the shade of an olive tree, cicadas whispering in the background. Maybe you're lying in a hayloft, soft straw beneath you, a warm breeze drifting through the slats above. Or maybe you're resting on a sun-warmed stone wall, the kind worn smooth by centuries of other tired travelers who once carried messages from stranger places to strangers' doors. The world slows down out here. Time doesn't rush, and neither do you. There are no more scrolls tonight. No roads to map, no maps to memorize, no sandals to patch. Just the gentle knowledge that everything, at least for now, is exactly where it should be. So let your thoughts drift, like a barge on a slow-moving river. Let your limbs grow heavy, your eyelids warm and slow. The story has wandered where it needed to go. The courier has rested, and so can you. The night is quiet now, and you are too. Sleep well.